Well, thank you all for showing up. So we're from Xperi, a company you may not know very well, but we have a number of household technologies such as HD radio in the States, DTS audio post-processing, TiVo. Many of you may know that. And we're here to talk about AutoStage, a platform that we developed we launched in 2020. We've developed it over the last 5 years. And during that development and commercialization, I spoke to many of you about the promise of analytics, a promise of connecting with and understanding your listeners like you've never been able to do before in the car. And after a lot of hard work by Desmond, a couple guys in the back of the room, and a couple other guys in Eastern Europe, we have an analytics platform that is launching today, going live today. So if you are on our platform, have worked with us, you will be able to log into this system and experience how your listeners are engaging with your programming like never before. So I'm going to run a video, re-baseline everyone around the functionality of AutoStage, and give you a little peek at the analytics we're going to go into in more detail. There we go.
Is radio ready for the future? DTS AutoStage is revolutionizing the radio experience in the car, rising to meet user expectations. DTS AutoStage helps build trust and engagement. We do it by giving today's smart listeners an enhanced in-car radio experience that preserves radio's competitive advantage. Its focus on communities. With DTS AutoStage, radio never looked so good because we delight listeners with features like market at a glance information, a visually rich modern display with accurate metadata, lyrics in the car, links to artist events, and interactivity. And we do this at scale, around the world. In the studio, DTS AutoStage's broadcaster portal gives station managers and program directors editorial control and access to actionable data and answers to critical questions about the audience, like when are they listening? What are they listening to? Where are the listeners located when tuning into your station? Our innovative analytics never leave you guessing. In a world dominated by digital chaos and big tech apps, we simplify, connect, and innovate to make life easier for you and your listeners. Get connected today with DTS AutoStage.
So hopefully the screenshots there of the analytics piqued your interest a bit. And one key point was left out of the video. Participation in this platform and access to the analytics is free for broadcasters. We do all of this as a service to the industry and make this data available back to you, all while delivering this amazing user experience. And why do we do this? Well, we've been working in the car radio space for about 23 years. We've got 125 million cars on the road with our automotive technology, and we saw what was happening in the dash, and we said we are uniquely positioned because of our relationship with the broadcast industry and our relationship with the auto industry to do something to help this industry compete against the threats of big tech. Every one of these 12 audio companies is coming after your listener in the car. They're doing it with a global, consolidated, consistent user experience, and they're doing it with incredible economic resources. $41.5 billion of revenue was earned by these companies in their audio business alone. That represents about 87% of all revenue generated by broadcast radio globally. So you've got 12 against what? 120,000 broadcasters around the world. And the reason those companies are succeeding is they offer unique benefits to the users of radio, the manufacturers of vehicles that put radio in the dash, and to advertisers. It's a consistent user experience that makes accessing content simple, straightforward, always reliable. The integration of these platforms in the car, in large measure, is done by the platform developer themselves. So Spotify rolls up their sleeves, and they help integrate their app into the in-vehicle entertainment platform. And then, as you all know, because you all have digital strategies, I'm sure, advertisers are expecting analytics, attribution, proof of performance, things that were very, very difficult to do in a broadcast-only world. We are able to now help you close that loop with the advertisers, and we're going to show you how. As I mentioned, we launched this platform in 2020. That was our first vehicle we launched with Mercedes. In fact, last year in Malmo, that was our only customer. We had a number of others in development, but we have since launched with 4 additional brands. One, the prominent U.S. EV manufacturer that we're not allowed to use their logo, but you may recognize the screen when I show it to you, and Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis. And what's super exciting about the launch, these launches happened in November. The launches were all done as software upgrades to existing vehicles in the market. So overnight, literally 30 days, it took 30 days to upgrade millions of vehicles around the world with not only that great user experience, but they all became data points for us to collect measurement to deliver back to the industry. Here's a close-up of the Mercedes. You can come see it yourself. It's down in the entranceway. Here is the Hyundai Ioniq, their e-vehicle implementation. And here is the unnamed electronic vehicle manufacturer. If you were ever in one of these cars before our system got the upgrade, you would have seen a very lackluster radio user experience. Now it is much richer, much more engaging, easy to identify your station and station information. This is a global platform. We work with all broadcast technologies. We get this question a lot because at our core, radio experience is really with HD radio. But when the company I helped start, Ubiquity, was bought by DTS, we expanded that, and we started working with DAB. We're members of World DAB. We actually have a colleague of mine who sits on the board. We also support analog radio in all the countries where a digital solution has not been deployed, and even CDR, the Converged Digital Radio Standard in China, which is critical to the automotive industry. And when I said we're global, I mean we're global. This slide actually represents a heat map of where vehicles are with DTS AutoStage connecting to our system and getting an enhanced radio experience. In 2022, we enhanced over 350 million hours of in-car radio listening. We expect that number to grow this year to over 4 billion hours of in-car radio listening. How is that growth taking place? We are expanding rapidly within the automotive industry. I mentioned we have 5 launch partners. In the next 4 to 12 months, we will launch with another 8 brands. These brands are going to launch vehicles and deploy them around the world. We will have this system in over 100 vehicle models. I kind of stole my own thunder where I talked about the 350 million hours going to 4.7 billion, but this is basically what's driving that. It's the number of connections, it's the number of events that radio stations are delivering to us that we are then delivering on their behalf into the vehicle that is driving all of this measurement opportunity. So we're not only engaging the user experience at your direction, but we're also informing you on the level of engagement in the car. So we are clearly the #1 choice of automakers, with over 13 automakers having selected our solution. We are award-winning by the industry. 2 years in a row, we have won the Frost & Sullivan Award for the best radio implementation. the largest by far global radio solution, serving over 90,000 different radio stations. We have a unique relationship with the music industry, both on the label and publishing side. We support 90,000 radio stations in 147 countries. And as I mentioned, the volume of listening that we are enhancing is growing dramatically. Come see it for yourself. If you're on our system already, come down to the booth. We'll walk you through the analytics. We'll validate your credentials, and you can go home with login access to see the data yourself and explore everything it has to offer. We only ask three things of broadcasters who want to be on this platform. You want the enhanced user experience, you want this great data, you need to give us three things. Permission to use your static data, your stream URL for out-of-market listening, and live data from your radio station. The live data is probably the most critical element for the user experience and the measurement. This is free. You can come down to our booth, sign up if you haven't already, and again, if you have, come see your data live and in action. So now I'm going to hand it over to Desmond, the guy who put all these analytics together, and we're going to have a chat about a couple critical questions that this data can help you as a radio station answer.
Thank you, Joe. So most of you, when you were in grade school, you might have heard about the 5 W's. They were invented by Aristotle, and basically it's how to answer a question. So every question there should be an answer to it. So we're going to go through that today. So the big question people first have are who. So the question is, who are the people who are in our analytics? So this is something good news, I think, for the broadcasters. In this world where we are with litigious issues, we have people who are going to the point of, we have GDPR, we have different privacy laws, we have different issues around the world, where in every region, every country, they have different laws around privacy and personal identifiable information. So we built our system from the ground up that privacy was the first thing, and that should be the most important. So we take cybersecurity very seriously. We do audits several times a year. We talk with the car companies as well as broadcasters, as well as other legal radio broadcasters, also the country themselves where those are done. So we are trying to work within the law and protecting you and your data. So your data, you retain ownership. I'll show you this in a second, but you can change the logo, you can change all your metadata. This is in your control. And at the same time, we do not share your information with any other broadcaster. We don't share it with any advertiser. This is your data, and it is only your data. And the other thing is, since there's no personal identifiable information, you don't have to worry about being sued. You have to worry about the processes you need to put in place for that. So overall, I think it's a good news, not just for the users, but also for you. So this is where you'd go, and this is what we call the broadcaster portal. This is just one peek of it. So this is a station in the UK. So as you can see here, there's logos, there's slogans, there's genres, everything that you would need that you typically would show for static data on a radio. Also, you can put your social media in there. As Joe mentioned, there are streaming URLs. So that is basically when you go out of coverage of your DAB or FM, we can flip a user over to a stream so you can continue tracking them through your stream. That's where you track it through your cookies. Also, these are some of the stations. I picked a random selection around the world. We have places all over the UK, Ireland, Korea, Japan, in Czech and Prague themselves, and also the US. So this is just a very small sampling, but you can see how they have controlled their data. You can see their logos, you can see what's playing. So that's where the live data is coming through. So the next question would be where? And this probably becomes one of the more important pieces of this is, what is a market? So a market could be something that a company, maybe in your country, has said, this is your market. This is where we tell you your market is, and this is one you belong to. It could be just your typical coverage map, the red circle, a KML file, however you measure your broadcast stuff. So the question is that important? Is a market important? Yes, it is. But we believe that your market should be where your listeners are. You could have a theoretical coverage, but the question is, where are the vehicles and where are the users who are listening to your station? So what you're looking at here is the actual location of these vehicles. So in this case, you can notice the market. It's not a circle. So there are places you can see here in Prague that to the south, that we don't have any cars. So you don't have any listeners there. But it's still part of your market because you have 1 or 2 people there. Maybe as it grows, you could see a bigger market. So this market is used for something I'll show you a little bit later called the heat map. And this is where we kind of get very exciting.
Yeah, and this I think is revolutionary in the industry. Is this on? Can you go ahead? Coming from the States, we have DMAs that are inherited from TV that define a radio market. You also have radio stations that use their KML files as a proximity of the market that they're trying to sell. What we have done here, and what Desmond's team has kind of researched and crunched all the data to develop, is a common methodology across all geographies to let your listeners actually define your market. Where people are listening to your station, to me, is a more valuable definition of the market than some arbitrary line drawn by a rating agency or a line controlled by physics. So this is stuff we do share with you, and we have already seen examples in the US where this is driving behavior of GSMs, of sellers, where they're going to actually find local retailers, for example.
True. So I'll just show you a few markets based on the location of the cars. So here we have Poland and Warsaw. You can see that is probably a little bit closer to a circle, but with a little head out thing. We also have a partner, SWR, in Germany. This is probably one of the more unique coverage maps. It looks much more like a cloud than anything else. But it's amazing to see where your listeners are, and you can see where usually when the darker colors, typically roadways, major cities, that type of thing, which you'd expect for a lot of these places, as well as RTL in Italy, in Milan. So here's another where you can see up in the upper and the northwest side, you can see there's water there. So of course there are no cars driving, so it makes sense. You don't have listeners there. We haven't gotten to boats yet, just cars. So the creation of a heat map is what this market is used for, with the location of the vehicles. So Joe had already mentioned we are gathering statistics and listening statistics. So these could be how many sessions, how long they were listening, those types of things. And we have to then blend that to your market. So in other words, you have a market, how many cars are in that market, and what percentages of those cars are listening to your station. So with this heat map, we give you lots of flexibility. I'm going to spend more time on this probably than anything else. You can see in the top here where the arrow is, you can actually select whatever time you wish. You could select last week. You could select this week. You could select any time you want. You could select the days of the week. Maybe weekday listening on your station is different than your weekend. Usually it is. So this gives you that flexibility. And the other thing we do, which is unique, is we are actually listening to every one of your transmitters. So in other words, and we give them unique identities. So you could look at the heat map for your individual transmitters. Maybe you want to see what your DAB coverage is and who's listening on DAB, or you may want to do it on an FM or an AM or wherever you may have. So in this case, this station we're looking at now has multiple transmitters. They can look at the heat map, each individual heat map for where the listeners are and who's listening. And this makes it very unique because we can do something really fun with this. You're looking here at Prague. Prague, at a distance, you can see the center of Prague is probably your hottest area. So that basically means you have the most vehicles listening to your station. Well, what's fun is, have you ever seen the neighborhood? You ever seen your radio station, the neighborhood you actually have listeners in? So what this gives us the ability to do is actually zoom in. These are done live. These can be done within 24 hours of your listening events. And you can see as we zoom in, you start seeing the neighborhoods, New Town and Old Town, which are on the center. And you can zoom around the map and see where your listeners are. This, to me, is probably one of the most unique things that we can bring to the table on this. Because now you're seeing listeners, not just on a city level, but on a neighborhood level. Next question will be when. When's the question that a lot of people have? And the question is day parting. We've all seen day parting. So now we're looking at day parting in a very different way. You can now look at your data 24 hours later. You have a big event that as a broadcaster you're promoting. You could actually go in 24 hours later and see, did it have any effect? Did anything happen in the industry or on your station that people wanted to listen to? So you can see that this is a typical day part where you basically have your percentage of your stations on the left, but on the bottom you can see the different hourly changes there. Probably a little bit hard to see, but there's actually a very gray line that's there, and that's an average. So in this case, we're looking at a Thursday. That gray line is basically showing what is your average on typical Thursdays. And that gives you the ability to see, are you up, are you down from your average? This, to me, makes a very interesting thing.
Yeah, there's one use case or one, I guess, bit of radio history that we like to show is the day the Queen passed away and what happened to LBC listening during that day. As the announcements came out from the palace about her being ill and then eventually that she passed away, the listening pattern for LBC that day was completely different from every other day. And because we see the whole system, we could actually see listeners moving from music stations over to LBC to get the latest news. Really fascinating, and I think as a program director, well, let me back up. I think a lot of this is being done on the digital space right now. You're probably measuring a lot of your mobile app audience and how that moves as you program or go into promotions or live events or break a new song. Now you're going to be able to see that and the impact of those programming decisions literally 24 hours after they happen. There's nothing like this that's ever been available to broadcast radio before. And what you can also do with this, which is very exciting, it's coming probably in about 6 months, is break it down by audio event. So we're going to be able to measure spots. We're going to be able to tell you how many people were listening to a song, how many people were listening to a spot. And I do want to reiterate at this point, we're only looking at the vehicles that are connected to our system. So this is not a currency play. This is not to replace, GFK or Arbitron. This is really giving you a different view into your audience on a very timely basis in vehicles that are equipped with AutoStage. And thankfully, we're going to see that number grow dramatically in the next year.
Yeah. So with that, we're looking at Das Ding. You can see this one, but we have a few others. So this Radio 80s in Italy. You can see definitely a different pattern. And also we have here RTE, Lyrics FM in Ireland, where this has been interesting as we've been talking to various broadcasters around the world. I've been quizzed several times on the data. One of the latest was there was a station that had a very poor morning show and it had a very good afternoon show. And they wouldn't believe that we could do this. So they said, could you show us the data up there? And sure enough, we saw a very low morning and we saw a very high afternoon. So to throw another curveball in just because, they said, could you show us a certain date? And I go, why do you want a certain date? And they said, could you just bring it up, please? I said, sure. I go, what happened that day? And they said there was a snowstorm. And what happened was everybody went to work and then they all left. We can literally see a huge spike and then it just dropped off. So this data becomes very relevant and it becomes something where as broadcasters, as Joe mentioned, you've seen it in the digital world, but you've never seen it in the car. And that's what makes it, for you as a broadcaster, very relevant and interesting. So the next would be what? So this comes down to what we're monitoring. So this could be charts. So this is not what your program manager put in for the songs of the week. What this is who was actually listening to the song. So this kind of changes the paradigm a bit. So in this case, we're seeing we have a list of 25 here. We just zoomed into 5. But you can see that there was actually the first song was actually up 5 spots from the previous week. We're also seeing Ed Sheeran on the bottom there is starting to go much higher. So as a program manager or a person who's actually doing the picking of the music for your station, you're now seeing things in a very different light. Who is actually listening versus what you're playing. So the question would be, what else can we do with this? So if we have the live data from you as a broadcaster and you do this for ads, we could do the same thing. What's your best ad spot? Maybe you're playing the same ad on 2 different stations. You can do an A-B comparison to see maybe on your pop station, you have that ad works better. Maybe it doesn't work as well on your classic station. As you give us live data, we can then do this type of analysis. Maybe you have a news show all morning, but you have different programs in the middle of that, different segments, 10-minute or 20-minute segments. We could then take that and give you a same type of a thing. So in this show, what's the most popular segments of that show? So as giving us live data, we are able to start showing these types of charts to you, which makes, to me, a very interesting thing, because this is what people are actually listening to. Maybe they're tuning away. Maybe Lifeless Stars is on the downswing. You're playing it too much. Maybe the listeners just don't care about it anymore. And since we know what's going on in the car, we can tell you when they tune away. So how?
This is probably my favorite, especially here in Europe, is you're planning a digital migration. We saw what happened with Norway shutting down analog FM, going over to DAB. We're going to be able to give you some amazing insights into how people are accessing your programming and what part of your network they're actually using to listen to the programming.
So in the case of when I was showing the heat map, I showed you how you could look at the different transmitters. So in other words, you could see your DAB transmitters, you could see your AM and your FM. So what we're looking at here is, this case we're looking just at Spain. And we're basically seeing in Spain, FM is still the dominant player here. So this is the top 25 in Spain. So we can see the top 21 mostly are FM. You can see the little red squares there basically show there's about 4 DAB. So they're just kind of getting into this migration, but FM is still the dominant player here. But the interesting part is we go to Germany. Germany has had has a very good run. They've done this migration, I think, in a very methodical way. But they're just the reverse of Spain. What they're showing is DAB is definitely the dominant thing here. FM is definitely on the lower side. But where things get more interesting is, and maybe in the countries who are thinking about moving to digital and getting rid of analog. We know Norway did it. Imagine if they had all this data beforehand. It would be a much easier transition. So I'm going to go.
Desmond, let me just jump in there. I want to point out one use case for Germany. If you look at SWR3, that's one station. Obviously, they have a very extensive network of distribution. So if you look at 1, 2, 4, 10, 11, 10, 11, they're all DAB. But if you look down at 19 and 20, those are 2 FM towers that are still very important in that network. We can give them the visibility in those heat maps to see exactly how many listeners are listening to those components of their infrastructure. I think this is extremely valuable for capital planning for a broadcaster.
So the one I think is really interesting is ABC in Australia. So here's a country who has started the DAB migration. They've talked about moving purely to digital. Very large country. But what we're seeing is AM still plays a part in here. So right now we're just looking at the ABC in general, but you can see there is one AM still. You can see FM and some DAB who are starting to get things. Now if we look at a country in a larger scale, and I shared this with somebody earlier, is if you look at the top 10 stations in Australia, 4 of them are DAB, 3 of them are FM, and 3 of them are AM. If you're thinking about getting rid of AM, I don't think now's the time in Australia. It's something where we're starting to see there's still a lot of coverage there and still people who are listening on there. This is insights which I think for anybody or any country who wants to transition, this becomes very valuable.
We're also not sharing the detailed data here, but the directional data, we're sharing it with our automotive partners. There's a lot of talk. How many conferences have you been to where people are saying radio is getting pulled out of the car, right? How long does radio have to live in the dashboard? We're showing car makers that people are listening to radio. It's not ratings data, it's actual data. And in many cases, it's actual data of their own drivers or the model that they want to compete with. So we are using this data to reinforce to the auto industry, radio matters, radio is alive and well, and the digital migration is taking place right in front of your eyes.
So we're going to go now to why. So the why, I think here is, why is this important to you guys? The analytics, I'm sure, are great. I'm very happy with them and what the team has done. But the question is have you ever been able to impact the dashboard? Meaning, if you change your logo, meaning your station changes formats, you go into our system, you change the logo, it shows up virtually instantly on the cars using DTS AutoStage. So in other words, you don't have to wait for it to propagate through another system. You don't have to wait for the other places to catch up with where your logo is. You can impact the dashboard directly. If you're playing an ad and you want to have a little bit of visual, you can do that too. This is something which you guys have never had before, and we're very happy to bring it to you with AutoStage. The other part is big data. You hear about it in television, you hear about it on internet, you hear about your mobile and digital strategies. But the thing is radio has not really been part of that. They've been trying to squeeze in social media and other aspects to it. But now we can give you actionable data from listeners who are in the car listening to your station, and that is something I think very valuable. And as Joe mentioned, it's free. You have to give us your live data so we can basically start analyzing it and who are the listeners and what they're listening to. But it makes big data is definitely very valuable, and it also gives you insights that you've never had before. And the most important thing, we're broadcast. We're in the broadcast world. You want your listeners to be happy because you want them to continue listening to your station. If you know them more, if you know what they like, or maybe you don't like, maybe you look at your market and you say, wow, we don't have many people down at the south. You could say, well, that's too bad. Or you could say, hey, sales guys, you need to start promoting down in that area. We need to expand our coverage. Now you're looking at things that are very actionable. You now can make data-driven decisions, which can be much more valuable in the long term.
So if you're in the room and you haven't signed up for us, and this maybe sounds a little too good to be true, I encourage you to talk to some of your European broadcast partners who have been working with us for a number of years. Bauer, Global, BBC, NPO, ARD. There's a very, very long list. Swedish Radio. Come down to our booth, see what we've got, sign up if you haven't. If you're already on, come take a look at your data. It's yours as of today.
We've had great feedback from the industry, and Fred Jacobs, president of Jacobs Media, he loves all these different features that we're bringing to it. It unlocks things that they've never seen, and talks about how programmers and sales managers in radio stations around the world are able to now see data they've never seen before. And for him, he wishes he had it when he was one. So you guys are hopefully giving it, we'll use this tool, and it's a very powerful one.
And it's just the beginning. We've been working on developing this. When I say we, I mean Desmond. I've been helping him with introductions to key broadcasters here in Europe, Australia. Commercial Radio Australia has been very much involved in this. A number of our European broadcast partners, some Korean and Japanese broadcasters, and a lot of US broadcasters have given us feedback into this initial launch. And now we want to hear from everyone else. We want you to use this tool. We want you to tell us what's working, what's not working, what has value, what could have value. And to the extent we are allowed to, under our contracts with the car companies, we will work to evolve this platform so you can continue to make great radio.
So, as Joe said, this is the beginning. We'd love to have feedback. I'd like to take all the credit, but there's many people in the back of the room who have assisted. I have several teams that are doing this too. It was definitely a team effort, and we hope you guys would enjoy these tools. And again, we'd love to have more insights from you guys. This is the portal up on the top. You can use a QR code on your phone if you so desire, but it's onboarding.connectedrad.io. This will give you the ability. And the three things Joe mentioned, these are very important. The static data, we try to pre-fill some of those in for you ahead of time, but if you want to change your logo, you want to change your slogan, you can do it right there yourself. Streaming URL is for our service following. So in other words, you go out of transmission range, you flip to the stream. Whatever tracking cookies you put on there, those are yours. We lose track of them after they leave the radio, after they leave either analog or digital. And this is where you guys, you already have digital strategies in place. Continue to use them as you have.
There's got to be at least one question somewhere in the room. Go ahead.
I think they have a microphone up there, I think.
We're going mobile with it. You know what? Okay. Go ahead. Okay.
We'll repeat the question.
You said earlier that the analytics is free for broadcasters. Thank you. I'm Dan, by the way. I'm from Romania. I was wondering if that's a promise like Zuckerberg's. I'm fine.
Okay.
No.
You're a broadcaster. You
Yeah.
shouldn't be comfortable with it.
No.
Is it like Zuckerberg's statement that Facebook is free and always will be, or will you at one point start charging?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what part of this process right here of onboarding is you sign a data use agreement. That's a contract between you as a broadcaster and us as a service provider. And in that, we explicitly state the terms that we will deliver you these analytics and metrics to the extent we are allowed by our auto manufacturing partners, GDPR, blah, 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 you will get that for free as long as you're providing us this live data. So unfortunately, I'm not Mark Zuckerberg, but I'll keep my promise.
You are not the product.
Thank you.
Yep.
I've got two questions. First, the car manufacturers also collecting data about the gender and the age of the drivers. Do they forward this data also to you?
So no, so we don't collect the personal identifiable information at this time. We are looking into doing personalized content, identity type systems. So in other words, when you get in the car, your spouse could have a different profile, et cetera. But we're trying to thread the needle with all the various privacy laws around the world, just to make sure not only you are protected, but so are we, and trying to follow all the car standards. So more coming soon. How's that?
Okay. I saw in the interface icons for thumbs up, thumbs down to rate the songs. Can you forward these data also to the radio station?
So this is something that if it's something the radio stations would like, there is a thing in our API that could be activated to do that, because we want that would be a wonderful feedback for you for Loop, but also we may use it in the future for personalized content and how we can identify what you like.
And there's the third question. You named the API. We are, as a radio station, collecting data from different sources. So it would be great if we can get the data from you via an API to include it in the dashboard for the staff. Is this possible?
Yeah, so part of my difficulty is I have to do this for every station in the world globally within a 24-hour period. So we've been spending a lot of our time making sure that's right. So we're still trying to figure out the best strategy for how to export the data without one is overloaded. Don't forget, we're paying for this at the back end, and to be honest, it's very it's expensive. Just think about all the data we're trying to gather. So, and as you saw, our numbers are only going to increase. So it's something we definitely are looking into. I can't promise it now, but it's something we definitely want to do. Just figure out the best way to do it for everybody, and following the privacy laws that go with it.
It would be really helpful because broadcasters have so many dashboards, and if I have to scan about 30, 40 dashboards a day, it's not really.
So the privacy laws make it difficult because, you have the right to be erased. So in other words, if I give you the data, you have to erase it and prove it. If you give it to somebody else, they also have to prove they erased it. So it becomes a very tricky wicket to work through. So we are trying to figure out the best way to do that.
Understand. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Anastasia from David Systems. Thanks for your presentation. I think what you showed today is very valuable for the broadcasters. But my question goes to the listeners. You showed in the beginning that the dashboard, that the UI for the listeners is interactive. It provides lyrics in the car. So my question is, how do you tackle the question of the security for the listeners?
So all the features that are implemented are done so at the direction of the OEM. So in the case of lyrics, Mercedes was the first one to launch with lyrics. They have certain operational constraints about when the lyrics can actually be displayed. But one of the things that we're seeing with all of our car company partners is the preparation for autonomous driving. And you may or may not be aware that a large German car manufacturer has just been certified to begin this summer fully autonomous operations on the Autobahn. So they're leaning into that, saying, if that's the reality, that's what I'm developing my cars to be able to do. I want to be proactive in making sure there's content in the vehicle that the drivers can enjoy. And if you were in the session before with Roger, Roger mentioned the great lengths that car companies are going to control that user interface, to make sure that if there's money to be made from content, if there's a certain layout and format, that they're in control of it. So they are really leaning into this. Lyrics is just the beginning of it. In January, we also announced that Xperi has won our first contract to implement video in the AutoStage platform. I told you at the start we're TiVo. We have a long history of enhancing and storing and replay video and doing electronic program guides. Well, we've been asked by one of our car partners to bring video into the car. What that's going to look like, I can't tell you. I've only seen a prototype, but I can tell you it's launching this summer. So this is not fantasy. This is happening now, which, as the guy in charge of radio at Xperi, also gives me an imperative to engage with you and saying, hey guys, video is coming this summer into the car. We have a platform that you can exploit today. So jump on board, do the best you can. We will drive this to all the 13 vehicle platforms that we're working with, and hopefully keep you ahead of the competitive curve with video.
Thank you. I have one more question, if I
Sure.
may. So the data you are providing is only from the cars, or is
Correct.
it the overall?
Just cars.
So if it's only from the cars, how can you compare it to the data which is coming from other devices? How is it different?
Let broadcast do that.
Yeah, we're actually, we can't on our own do anything to say that this data is representative of in-home listening or even a different vehicle brand. The Audi behavior may be completely different from the Mercedes driver. But what we are doing is working with groups like Triton to try to understand what they're measuring in the digital space, their methodology, what we're measuring, because we're both actual measurement platforms, and seeing how we can combine them. I think as we get more and more vehicle brands out there, we're going to have a better demographic cross-section of your audience. But that combination of data and how you can look at it, like this gentleman was saying, look at it in one dashboard, have one view of your audience, is something that I think we have to collaborate on to figure out how to meet your needs. But right now, we can't. We can only tell you what's on our system.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jill in the back.
We love free stuff. What's your business model, though, as pertains to the broadcast?
Sure. We license access to the API to the car companies. So the car companies pay us a couple dollars. They get lifetime access to this platform anywhere in the world. And that's extremely valuable to a car company. If you think back to what I was saying about, Spotify being a monolithic platform, the development and the service reliability is all managed by Spotify. We give that same economies of scale to the auto manufacturers, so they can build one radio, ship it anywhere in the world. You're going to get that same user experience, and if something goes off, they call us, we fix it. Every one of these radio platforms is certified. Every one is governed by our contractual relationship with broadcasters on how we can use their data, and the contract that they sign with us, the car companies sign with us for the services that they want to enable. So the buck stops with us. And that's why this business model works. We solve a lot of problems for the car companies, and I believe we create tremendous value for the broadcast industry. One more. Oh, sorry.
Oh, two more.
Two more.
You've worked with a lot of broadcasters. Who has a really good in-car experience? What station or company?
Oh boy, well, on this platform, a lot. I could go through, iHeart has integrated with us, all of Odyssey, all of BBC, all of ARD. So there are literally tens of thousands of radio stations that have done a deep integration with us that give us the heartbeat of data that we need to drive this system. And one of the things that we do for the smaller stations who may not have the ability to do the engineering work of, say, an iHeart, we apply our own TiVo music metadata to this ecosystem, which is fully licensed, global. We're one of two companies or three companies now around the world that have that license. And we will apply album art at a minimum on behalf of radio stations, even analog radio stations.
Hiya. Ooh, it's loud. Forgive my ignorance here. How does this fit in with the tethered experience around CarPlay and auto? Is this only for connected cars?
So that's a really good question, because a lot of people look at this user experience and say, well, this is just another CarPlay or Android Auto implementation. It's not. This is the embedded broadcast radio platform that you drive off the lot. You don't need a cell phone for this. All the car companies have an embedded modem in the car that enables us to deliver the very low bandwidth metadata that you're seeing. It's a very light payload, but this is the native radio experience. And You know,
So
you
this is
get,
connected cars only.
this is connected cars only, correct. But it's not dependent on Android or that's the guy who designed it, so I guess he can't help but answer the question. So, yep.
Shutting us down.
Do you manage programmatic advertising into the platform?
No, we do not. No,
Okay.
this is simply a conduit for metadata right now into the vehicle. We are looking at monetization opportunities in partnership with broadcasters and car companies. Those discussions are ongoing and in development. They may include targeted ads, but again, we wouldn't manage the programmatic platform in that case.
Thanks.
We being kicked off, so thank you all for coming. Please join us at the booth. Gladly show you the platform when you can. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe and Desmond. It is lunchtime. Enjoy your lunch and enjoy the rest of your day.